Hey guys, welcome to another Friday video. We're checking out the Ryzen 2600. I bought this CPU recently from AliExpress. You can get it as low as $106 and it's a very capable processor. I also found this rather unique looking computer case on eBay, but you can also get it from AliExpress, so I ordered one. And yeah, it was a huge pain to actually put together, but once you're done, it actually looks pretty nice and it's definitely a showpiece. And I believe in the town where I live, no one else has a computer system like this, which, yep, to some people that can be appealing. So we have quite a few parts that we're gonna discuss. I've got some benchmarks. I also installed the Radeon 5700 and ran a few benchmarks, not the usual amount of games because the SSD is only 240 gigabytes. So yeah, let's talk about this machine and see what it can do. So choosing the right mainboard, I actually thought quite a bit about that. Initially, I wanted to go with an A320 mainboard. You can pick this up from AliExpress for around 50, 60 US dollars. This one is from Soyo, very basic, but there are no BIOS updates. It still comes with the stock BIOS and there's nothing on the website. It also does not have an M.2 slot, which is nice for video editing. So right at the same time, ICDoc contacted me and asked me if I wanted to check out this PCI Express hard drive dock, and initially I thought that's a good idea. It gets rid of cables, keeps it clutter free. So in the end, I did not end up using this product, and that has to do with performance. On the box, the website and the Amazon listing, it says SATA 3 6 gigabits per second, but it performs slower, and for video editing that is an issue. A little bit disappointed. It's a case of misleading advertising, to be honest, and the sales rep didn't even be upfront and told me that that is a mistake with the brochures. Maybe they assumed I wouldn't notice, but I did, and yeah, the whole thing doesn't really sit well with me, so it's a product I'm not gonna recommend. So with the PCI Express SSD option not working out, I wanted to use M.2. I had two options. I had the colorful B450M mainboard. You can get that for around $80 on AliExpress, but I believe I bought this end of December or beginning of January. Amazon Australia had a really good deal on this gigabyte mainboard, so let's have a closer look. So this mainboard was listed for 95 Australian dollars, which is 64 US dollars, and that's a fairly decent price. It's a B450 mainboard. It has 4 RAM slots. It is compatible with the Ryzen 3000 series. It has VRM coolers, and yeah, worked beautifully. The only issue I had was the boot times were a little bit long, but there was a BIOS update. I flashed it to version F50. It specifically mentions improving of system boot time. And after that, yep, it turns on a little bit quicker. And so far, this has been working really well for me. And I bought this memory kit. So this is from TimeTech. We have a 16 gigabyte DDR4 RAM kit with 3200 megahertz and CL16. So I got this from Amazon Australia. In Australian dollars, 105. That converts to 71 US dollars, which I believe is an okay price. And with the gigabyte mainboard, you have to go into the BIOS and select the overclocking profile for the RAM to get the faster speeds. And on Ryzen, it does make a difference. I compared using a slow 2400 RAM kit compared to this, and just doing the video editing, moving the mouse around and dropping things on the timeline, I could tell a difference in responsiveness. So yes, if you're building a Ryzen system, fast memory is important. The Infinity Fabric, which is sort of a connection with between all the cores on the CPU, runs at the clock speed of the RAM. So the higher the clock speed, the more performance you're getting out of your CPU. So in this video, we will be using the RX 5700 to make sure we're not bottlenecked in any games. But this is the card I will actually use for my video editing. It's a RX 470D. This is a Chinese variant. It has a few shaders disabled, but you can flash the BIOS and turn it into a proper 470. And it's driving a 4K monitor, and for video editing, it is perfectly fine. Also with the more recent AMD drivers, you can turn on integer scaling, and on a 4K monitor, if you play at 1080p, you will get perfectly sharp pixels, no scaling softness with bilinear filtering or anything like that. So basically, if you turn on integer scaling and you play games at 1080p on a 4K monitor, it will look like your panel is a 1080p panel. So now let's have a closer look at this computer case. So it is from QDIY, the PCJM5K. And I bought this from eBay for 88 Australian dollars, which converts to 60 US dollars. So definitely not cheap. And yeah, there are a few shortcomings, but let's have a closer look first. So here we have the RX 5700. We've got a 240GB M.2 SSD, NVMe, the Gigabyte B450 mainboard, and one of these RGB coolers that I got from AliExpress. You're looking at around 15 US dollars because these CPUs do not come with a cooler, so you have to buy one. The temperatures were a little bit high in the 70s, which is not really much of a concern, but just something to be aware of. So this is definitely not a high-end cooler, but the RGB effect, a lot of you are into that, and why not? At night doing some video editing, it is kind of a nice effect. So this case takes full ATX mainboards and also micro ATX, of course, but there are a few issues about that, and we will talk about that later. But let's have a look at the other sides. So we're just slowly turning it, and yeah, here goes the power supply. So there's a mount here, and here we have the rear of the mainboard. I chose a fully modular mainboard, simply less cables, less clutter, and because we're using an M.2 and not an SSD, that means no SATA cable, no SATA power cable, so it just keeps everything neater. There is a power button here at the front. Just gonna adjust the camera. Unfortunately, no hard drive activity LED, so we're only getting power on off and power LED, so no reset button, no hard drive activity LED, also no front USBs. So that's a bit of an issue for me because I plug in external hard drives. So what I will have to do is just plug in the hard drive in the back here and then just place the hard drive here. So yeah, it's a little bit, I wouldn't say sketchy, but yeah, it's an open bench, and I kind of like that. I like having access to everything, and it's definitely a nice little machine to look at. Unique, you can definitely call this build unique as well. Is it good value? Well, that depends. So now let's have a look at some of the challenges of using this case. So firstly, putting it together can be quite frustrating. It comes with a ton of parts, and it took me well over an hour to put everything together. And one of the biggest issues are the mainboard standoffs and adjusting them. So there are no markers, and you can't really measure it out either. So it was a case of installing. I used an old mainboard and an old video card to align everything. But the problem is that when you use a mainboard to align all the screws, you can't actually fasten it. So this slides left and right, and there's a screw here to secure it. But if your mainboard is on top, you actually can't secure the screw. So really frustrating. So you have to place the mainboard on there. Maybe you can mark it with a pen or something like that. But I found the whole experience really frustrating. I'm happy I got it together in the end. But if you're an impatient person, you don't have a lot of time and you get easily frustrated, this is not a case for you. The other thing I noticed is that this is not the most sturdy case. So it comes with little screws and you get an Allen key, and the manual says do not overturn them. But in order to give them enough torque that actually everything is together firmly, yeah, you can easily overdo it and yeah, destroy the screws. So that's definitely something to watch out for. So it's a balance of giving them enough torque so everything holds together. But yeah, just be careful how you move this around. I pick it up and hold it from the bottom rather than just like gripping it up here or at the top. And lastly, you get these plastic caps to put on the end, but some of them, they don't really stay on, so I'm not sure what's going on here. But yeah, that might be easily solved with some glue. Still, it's just another little annoyance, and definitely something you have to be aware of when considering getting this case. And now we're going to talk about performance. So video editing is a dream. So the Ryzen 2600 does have enough threads. I used a Ryzen 1700 for video editing for a while, And the video encoding is fantastic, but the actual editing process, it just doesn't have enough IPC or high enough clock speed. And the Ryzen 2600 is really good here, just putting things on a timeline, splitting the track, and yeah, just doing video editing. It's a joy and very responsive. I measured the power consumption under load running Cinebench R20. We get a power reading of 115 watts, idle sitting on a desktop, 56 watts. I ran CPU Z, we're getting a multi-thread score of 3366 and a single thread score of 431. And we've got result for Cinebench. In R15 we're getting 1186 and in R20 2543. And now let's have a look at some games. Now, usually I'll test a wider range of games, but the SSD on this machine was limited. I also had to download all the games separately. Usually I use a SSD ready to go, like a 2 terabyte SSD, and it's got all the games already downloaded. Also, this is my main machine, so I need to get this done quickly so I can actually do the editing on this machine. So doing a video on a machine that's your main machine is actually quite a bit awkward. So let's have a look at Far Cry New Dawn first. That game on the machines that we usually cover on the channel can be challenging, but here we have a decent processor now. It runs at well over 60 FPS. So that's with high details, and yeah, beautifully looking game, and yeah, runs wonderful. The next game we have is Outer Worlds. Runs at around, just over 100 FPS. So also the CPU giving the video card the opportunity to show what it can do. The next game we have is F1 2018. That runs at well over 100 FPS. And that's also a game that has been struggling on some of the older budget CPUs that we looked at recently. But finally, you know what's coming. Does it run Crysis? And yes, it does. Look at that. I think I saw 1 or 2 dips below 60, but otherwise it runs at over 60 FPS. Silky smooth. So this is the first. And yeah, so Ryzen 2600 is a good start if you want to play good old Crysis. You can pick it up from GOG without any DRM. That's where I got it from, and that's what I recommend. And still to this day, a beautifully looking game. So guys, all in all, I'm pretty pleased with how this build ended up going. It's definitely an eye-catcher, and it's definitely unique, and I like these open test benches. I'm not a fan of cases, and I stopped actually accepting cases to use in my builds. They're just a pain in the neck to work with, and I do like changing things, and I like being able to access everything and have it open in the air. Also for cooling, the ambient temperature and everything, you don't need any case fans. So the only fan that runs is the CPU fan and the video card. So there are also benefits in regards to noise. Performance is fantastic. The Ryzen 2600 is a CPU I really like. It's got enough cores for the future. It's got enough IPC and high enough clock speed for older software, and it is very snappy and responsive. So some of the early, I wouldn't call it issues, but if you get a first generation part, it's not mature yet and you're not getting the best performance. So some of those kinks have been ironed out with the Ryzen 2600. And in Australia, for example, there are a couple of CPUs that you can get only in China or in the US. We don't get access to those. So the Ryzen 2600 is readily available on AliExpress. You might also be able to get it on Amazon and eBay. And do remember, if you buy from AliExpress, you do not get a boxed cooler. So you will definitely have to get a dedicated cooler. So do compare prices. It might be better buying a boxed Ryzen, which includes a cooler locally, for example. You just have to look at the prices. Putting the case together can be frustrating. Lots of parts, and especially the motherboard tray, the standoffs, that has not been done well. It's a real pain to make sure everything is aligned properly, and lots of back and forth. And I wouldn't use the mainput that you're going to use for that, because you might be scratching it around just trying to align all the mounting holes. And but all in all, I'm pretty happy with how the build turned out. I will pull out this video card, put the RX 470 into this machine, and then I will start editing this video. And as always, guys, I hope you found this interesting. definitely not something I will do very often, cases and builds. It's just not something I like to do. I prefer just to test budget machines and older machines and see how they perform, and retro stuff, of course. So as always, keep those suggestions coming. Give it a like, leave a comment, and I shall see you soon with another one.